traffic school is pretty great. This is the 21st episode of the second season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by John Fortenberry, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. I don't actually have that many notes, and I think the main reason for that is because there's not necessarily a lot of variety. We don't jump from scene to scene to scene, as we do with most episodes. But that's not a problem. It does still work really well, and even though I may not have the most extensive notes, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. It starts off with Robert coming over to Ray and Debra's and remarking that nobody's home because Marie and Frank were over at Ray and Debra's, which I thought was rather adorable. And Robert explains that he's been teaching traffic school. It's his first day. And in the feedback from the students, well, things were not very positive. They were basically saying it was tremendously boring. And he gets the idea to practice on the family. Some are more willing to help than others, but at the end of the day, they decide to help him because it's Robert and they want to seem like they care about the traffic school part of his life. And he starts to host this traffic school and we're all in the front room. I think it's nicely set up. They've basically shifted from the kitchen to the living room. That's the extent of the scene change that we had as we jumped forward in time ever so slightly. And he's not exactly being entertaining. Now, obviously, traffic school is not meant to be a comedy show, but at the same time, it needs to be interesting enough to listen to. But in Robert's defense, he barely got a chance to start before people started to make things entertaining themselves. Frank forced Ray to explain why he got a traffic ticket because apparently he saw somebody wearing a beige top. He thought they were naked. That meant he wasn't looking at the road and he ran over an orange cone. Frank then does a series of bathroom jokes revolving around binding, and that in itself I don't find funny, but what I did love is even Marie was laughing along with Frank, and that almost never happens. Marie very much keeps a straight face, kind of rolls her eyes at her husband's humour, but here she was actually laughing along with it, and then before long, Ray and Debra were joining in and everybody was having a great time. Everybody except Robert. And Ray tells him that he needs to lighten up. And I feel like, yes, he needs to maybe relax a little bit, but there is, of course, a balance to be had there. And Robert leaves the room and he maybe lightens up a little bit too much. In fact, I think that's what Ray said when Robert came back in. I think he said he lightened up too much because Robert comes in with traffic cop Timmy, which is a ventriloquist dummy. What I love about this is Robert doesn't even try to do ventriloquism when he talks as Timmy. I love the voice. I love the voice he used. But his mouth is very much moving, Robert's mouth, which I think was the right way to take it, and it kind of almost made it more funny. And everybody seemed to be really taking to traffic cop Timmy. Everybody except Ray, but Ray eventually did give Timmy a chance. But before long, and I love the direction this took, it took maybe a couple of minutes for me to kind of realise just how beneficial Timmy was. But he starts off with talking to Frank, and then he insults Frank's driving. Timmy then talks to Marie, and Marie seems to be getting all of the information correct. But then we find out that 30 years ago, they accidentally left Robert at a gas station because they thought he was asleep at the back of the car. And my first thought was, okay, fair enough. They drove a couple of minutes, turned around, and obviously it's a horrible thing to do, but they realised quickly, no, apparently Robert was there for over an hour. That must have been so traumatising. And the way Timmy spoke about this was brilliant because people, mainly Frank and Marie, were talking to Timmy as if he's a real person. And when ventriloquism, or I guess any kind of dummy work, is done well, or done in a way that's at least engaging, it is so easy to forget that that character is not a real person. And that's exactly the trap that Frank and Marie fell into. I, as a viewer, fell into that. And I absolutely loved it. And it really seems like Robert has found his voice. And he was able to say things through Timmy that Robert doesn't normally have the confidence to say. And this is not new information. For example, child therapy often involves using a toy For example, figures in a dollhouse, getting children to use those dolls to express their feelings. And here we have something quite similar with Robert, and I think it's absolutely fantastic and also kind of creepy. I will be honest, I am kind of scared of ventriloquist dummies, even when it's not done properly. As we see, Robert is moving his mouth. I still find them very creepy, but it's very effective, and it's like Robert was unleashing all of these pent-up emotions and a bit of anger and frustration and sadness. He referred to Frank as Burp and Slurp, which I feel like that should be the name of a child's doll that like does magic burps and slurps its bottle. I loved that. And then he walks out of the house, and the audience's reaction was fantastic because there was nothing but sympathy for Robert in that room, at least from the audience. Maybe not so much from his family. I think his family at this point were just kind of baffled by this outburst from Robert, because when Robert got up to leave, I think it reminded everybody that this wasn't Timmy and this was Robert. And I thought it was beautifully, beautifully done. Ray then goes over to see Robert, and they have a really lovely moment, actually, where they're talking about how they're both as messed up as each other. Ray was very much smothered as a child, and yeah, they bond over Marie and Frank's questionable parenting, and I thought it was really pleasant. And then we end in a way that I thought was fabulous. Robert comes down, presumably the following morning. Frank is at the breakfast table, and Robert sees what is left of Timmy. He is headless. And then a second later, Marie opens the freezer and screams. And what I love about this is the angles that they've used, because initially we can't see inside the freezer. For a couple of seconds, it's very much just implied that Timmy's head is in the freezer. And then after Marie screams, we get to see inside the freezer, and there is the head, and it fits so perfectly as well in this little freezer. It's fabulously done, and I really enjoyed this. We have a lot of humour in this, but I think we have a lot of really moving moments as well, and it's such a great chance to dig a little bit deeper into Robert, because yes, we know he gets irritated when everybody gives Ray all of the attention, and yes, we know his childhood was not a bed of roses, but to actually give him this outlet in the form of traffic cop Timmy to actually express those emotions and maybe say things that he's not been able to say for up to 30 years or maybe even longer, I think is really beautiful. And I'm not saying that anybody who has things to say to somebody should go and get a ventriloquist dummy, but I think there's an important message there that maybe people have things they want to say and they just can't get it out. And maybe we need to be more receptive of people around us, because I don't think Marie and Frank would ever really ask Robert, how are you feeling? They might ask him if he's hungry. Marie certainly would. But there's never really been an opportunity for Robert to bring these things up. But now he had the chance, and I thought it was beautifully executed. Very, very well done. I'd love to know where traffic cop Timmy is now. Very, very creepy. I'm not a fan of ventriloquist dummies. The only ventriloquism I like is Nina Conti, just as a complete irrelevant aside to everything. And traffic cop Timmy is not one I'd want to meet in person. But as part of the episode Traffic School, I thought it was all pretty great.